GCSE Poetry, War and Conflict, My Lost Duchess, and Poems to compare it to. So let's look at the annotated poem. Ferrara, that's my last Duchess, painted on the wall, looking as if she were alive. I call that piece a wonder, now. Fra Pandolf's hands worked busily a day, and there she stands. Will it please you sit and look at her? I said. Fra Pandolf by design, for never read strangers like you that pictured countenance, the depth and passion of its earnest glance. But to myself they turned, since none puts by the curtain I have drawn for you but I, and seemed as they would ask me, if they durst, how such a glance came there, so, not the first. Are you to turn and ask thus? Sir, 'twas not. Her husband's presence only called that spot of joy into the Duchess's cheek. Perhaps Fra Pandolf chanced to say, her mantle lips over my lady's wrists too much, or paint must never hope to reproduce the faint half-flush that dies along her throat. Such stuff was courtesy, she thought, and cause enough for calling up that spot of joy. She had a heart, how shall I say, too soon made glad, too easily impressed. She liked whatever. She looked on, and her looks went everywhere. Sir, 'twas all one, my favour at her breast, the dropping of the daylight in the west, the bough of cherries some officious fool broke in the orchard for her, the white mule she rode with round the tennis, all and each would draw from her alike the approving speech, or blush at least. She thanked men, good, but thanked somehow I knew not how, and if she ranked my gift of a 900-years-old name with anybody's gift, who'd stoop to blame this sort of trifling? Even had you that skill in speech, which I have not, to make your will quite clear to such an one, and say, just this, or that in you disgust me, here you miss, or there exceed the mark, and if she let herself be lessoned so, nor plainly set her wits to yours, forsooth, and made excuse, then would be stooping, and I choose never to stoop. O sir, she smiled no doubt, wherever I passed her, but who passed without much the same smile. This grew, I gave commands, then all smiles stopped together. Then she stands, as if alive. Will it you please rise? We'll meet the company below, then I repeat. The Count, your master's known malfeasance, is ample warrant that no just pretence of mine for dowry will be disallowed, through his fair daughter's self, as I avowed. At starting is my object, nay, we'll go together down. Sir, notice Neptune, though taming a sea-horse, thought a rarity, which claws of Innsbruck cast in bronze for me. So let's look at poet context firstly. So the poet's name is Robert Browning, and he was born in 1812 and died in 1889. He was born in London but spent most of his life in Italy and eventually died in Venice. He disliked school, so was homeschooled, but was also fluent in many languages and started writing poetry when he was a child. In 1845, he married Elizabeth Barrett against her father's permission, keeping the wedding secret from her domineering father. He had visited Italy shortly before writing the poem My Lost Duchess. So let's look at the title first. My hints that the poem will be in the first person and also sets up the narrator to be possessive. Last implies that this Duchess is one from several and unidentifiable initially from the title, and European nobility implied from the title Duchess. So let's look at structure and form essay points. It's written in iambic pentameter. If you don't know what that is, just pause to read the pink box. And this is a very traditional form, which is a classic for English poetry. The metre reflects how the Duke holds traditional and conservative views of women, especially seeing as the poem is set in the past. It also demonstrates the Duke's sense of pride and superiority, for the metre has a very tight control of both rhythm and rhyme. Now, it was originally used by Shakespeare to show nobility, and it was thought to be the most natural meter for English language. Thus, the speaker or characters are able to maintain a conversational tone whilst still keeping a dramatic element. Now let's look at the stanzas. In fact, there are no stanzas, it's actually just a single verse. Now, the use of single verse to the poem makes it feel overwhelming and tiring, as I certainly felt whilst reading it. This structure mirrors the Duke's power, suggesting his presence is overwhelming as he dominates the room and poem. This power relates to how there is no importance placed on needing to cover up his mistreatment of past wife, as he is so powerful it won't impact him. It makes it very obvious that it is only his view that is ever given in any situation or decision, and this dominating personality relates to the context of the poem as both set and written in patriarchal society by a man, so women are only being viewed through the eyes of these type of men. The no stanza structure of the piece also gives a sense of it being a stream of consciousness of the Duke's unadulterated thoughts and feelings. This stream of consciousness suggests the speaker lacks censorship, thus demonstrating a lack of control among himself. This lack of control implies that the Duke has control over others, but not over himself, and is trying to overcompensate for this, and is a bit hypocritical in society. Here are some language essay points. So we've talked and discussed possessive pronouns, especially in the title, and the Duchess as a painting. So by portraying the character as a painting, it is displaying the complete objectification of not just the Duchess but women in that era. She's something to be admired and looked upon, and if you've ever heard the phrase to be seen and not heard, that is exactly what's demonstrated by that portrait. His control over the painting is an extension of his control over her, demonstrated through the line, "None puts by that curtain I have drawn for you but I." This may suggest he is threatened by other men enjoying her presence and beauty, which highlights the absolute control he has over her, not just over her life, but over her death and memory after death too. So poems to compare it to. In terms of similarities, they both utilise a first-person narrative, but have different defining structural choices, which provide some textual depth, which we've talked about. And in terms of differences, they both choose to use illusionary language, but to contrasting effect. In Checking Out Me History, metaphors such as bandage up me eye with me own history serves to highlight how Agard has a lack of power as a child, whereas in My Last Duchess, the Duke makes to having killed his wife, such as, "I gave commands, then all smiles stopped together," which shows how his status and wealth has afforded him an excess of power which he is now free to abuse without consequence. So thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful, be sure to subscribe, and for more advice, follow me on Instagram at NoWaffleGCSE. Thank you for watching again, and see you soon.